another session on education. In this particular session, we're going to be talking about effective feedback. What defines effective feedback? What are the principles of doing that? And I'm going to leave you with 2 challenges and then explore some common settings that we give feedback and the barriers and how to overcome those barriers. So in terms of feedback, I really believe that feedback is the most powerful tool for individual growth and development and learning. And that is really how we define what is effective versus ineffective feedback. It is the learning of the person receiving the feedback that defines a good or bad experience. And we'll talk a bit about that later. In terms of the principles that underlie effective feedback, there's a lot of really simple things that we can do to support effective feedback. And let's go through them right now. It needs to be timely. So ideally, if you're in a team-based environment with a mentor or supervisor, you're receiving regular formal feedback. And then after certain observed encounters or clinical activities or procedures, you are receiving immediate feedback very shortly after you complete that task, having that feedback about your performance and how you can learn more to get better at your skills and your expertise and knowledge. The more specific feedback is, the more specific will be the learning and the growth. And that can be both in terms of the person giving the feedback, but as a recipient of feedback, if you are inviting feedback, ask for specific feedback on a specific area. Recently I gave a talk and I said, can you please give me feedback on how I best achieve the challenge of taking a complex concept and breaking it down into an easy to learn approach and practical tips of how to apply that knowledge. And it could be that you're asking for specific feedback on your communication style, specific feedback on your medical knowledge, specific feedback on your leadership, specific feedback on your procedural skills. The more specific a question you have, the more likely it is that you're going to get that specific and powerful feedback that is going to then enable learning. Ideally, it's informed by direct observation. And if it's not informed by direct observation, ideally by some kind of objective measures, so statistics or other things that are performed. One of the feedback things could be that you've noticed that their discharge rate is higher. Let's talk about why that is and how they can then take that further. Perhaps the discharge summaries are not being completed in a timely fashion. And so you can explore how we could improve that discharge summary rate. Perhaps they're on a recent survey, which the survey is obviously not direct feedback, you're eliciting others' perspectives on things. You could use a survey as a kind of somewhat objective measure, or at least it's written feedback to inform performance improvement. The one that's done not sufficiently enough, in my opinion, is being prospectively informed. And what does that really mean? It means that you're thinking about it and you're asking for that feedback in advance. We often ask for feedback retrospectively, and the person giving the feedback then has to kind of scratch their head, and I've done that even this week and gone, actually, I can't think of any direct observations I've made that would inform really useful suggestions for improvement. But if I'm asked for those things in advance, and if I ask the people that are giving me feedback for the specific question in advance of the activity that I'm looking for the feedback on, I will get more specific and more powerful feedback that's going to improve my performance. It needs to be done in an appropriate setting. Ideally, this needs to be a somewhat private place that is undisturbed. And maybe you could even say, we're going to have some feedback. Can someone hold your pager or hold your phone whilst we do that so we can have an uninterrupted conversation? And that's really important, particularly when it comes to kind of performance review type meetings, that it is private. You're able to talk about confidential aspects that might be influencing their performance, and might not be confidential at all, but you're giving the person that respect of the privacy that's there. It needs to be constructive. If there's no constructive suggestions, there is no learning. There really must be. The learning and constructive approach go hand in hand, and that you're ideally breaking it down into practical steps, solutions, tips and advice that's going to help this person grow, help them improve, help them perform better. It needs to be interactive. So feedback is not, I just tell you my observations and how you're going to improve. It's ideally that is the initial part, and then from that births a conversation and a discussion around how they might improve further, and testing out some of that feedback and saying, can you give me some more examples of how that could work better? Could you give me some examples of how it would look different if I applied your advice? Can I ask you some other questions about other areas of my performance? That kind of conversation is really, really valuable, and you want to be encouraging that if you're the person giving the feedback to say, what would you like to unpack a bit more? Do you have any other questions that I can fill? Are there other areas that you'd like to do it? Should we make another time for feedback in a week or a fortnight? The other elements are, if feedback can encourage self-reflection. Self-reflection is a very powerful form of almost self-feedback in itself. that's a really good thing, and that can really set someone up and empower them for ongoing improvement. And likewise, if we avoid negativity, we then hopefully avoid coming away from a negative experience, because if people are experiencing negativity, there's often the rise of negative emotions and they interfere with learning processes. We know that really well. And they can often come away not going, I learned something, but coming away going, I felt offended, or I felt put down, or I felt embarrassed, or I felt attacked. And those kind of defensive feelings and the negative emotions that come up when we experience negativity often will be barriers to receiving effective feedback as defined by learning and growth of the learner. So those are the principles that we want to apply to really help ground and provide a platform for quality feedback and learning. There's a lot of models that you can use that help in different ways apply those principles, and some less than others. Here's a whole range that during a literature search I found. There's some that I think we all know the sandwich model. That doesn't really work very well. The whole point of saying good and bad, there's negativity there in itself, so that one doesn't work. There's some really complex ones like BROF. What a great acronym. BROF, or CEDAR, or BOOST, or STAR. They're probably slightly more positive. The one that I really think is the best model, although sometimes other models are appropriate, is the positive critique method, and this is sometimes called Pendleton's rules. And it has just 4 really simple steps that encourage self-reflection, that avoid negativity, that focus on constructive and interactive discussion. It's informed by direct observation. So this is where you go, if I'm giving the feedback and maybe you're receiving it, what do you think you did well in that particular interaction or that episode or whatever I observed? And this is what I think you did well. What do you think you could improve? This is how you can improve. And notice the real emphasis on, the what is the observations, and then there's the why and the how. And the why and the how are terms which we'll talk about later that really get to the core and the deeper level of learning. The positive critique method actually works really well in groups, and I use this really frequently. And the only change to do that is you go, what do you think you did well? Here's what I think you did well. Let's have everyone give 1 point or 1 or 2 points of what they did well and why they did that well. We're learning from our strengths and learning to build our strengths further. And then what do you think you can improve? Okay, here are my suggestions. Let's go around the group and each share a suggestion on how we can improve. And that way you're kind of making it a normal thing that people are sharing and contributing. And even between peers and near peer feedback, that learning is actually really powerful, potentially as powerful as the master and learner or master and apprentice style model that we probably traditionally think of. So we've established what's effective feedback. It's defined by learning and the growth of the learner. We've looked at principles that will serve as a platform for quality and effective feedback. And then we've talked about the model that I'm recommending, the positive critique method, and how we can use that either on a one-to-one basis or in a group setting. So I want to give you now a challenge and a paradigm shift. When we think about feedback, we often think about good and bad feedback, and we often talk about strengths and weaknesses as well. Things that you did well, things that you did badly. And you can see that there's naturally a kind of bent towards negativity on that second hand. And even when we talk about good and bad, and if I were to say that, most people will give you instances saying that was good feedback, that was bad feedback. What we're really talking about with good and bad is we're making a judgment of the overall experience, not necessarily the learning. That feedback was a good experience because I felt comfortable, I felt safe, and I learned something. Usually, not always. Sometimes you just actually go, I felt comfortable and I felt encouraged, but when I think about it, I didn't actually learn anything. And on the bad experience, it's usually going to be, I didn't learn anything and I felt attacked or I felt put down. That's the experiential judgment. And what I want to shift from is, rather than good and bad feedback, shift to effective versus ineffective feedback, and defined only by the learning that takes place. That's a challenge that I received in 2016 when I attended a conference in Perth, the Ottawa conference, where we talked about written feedback and trying to really get to the heart of it, which is the learning. So I'm going to leave you with that, the paradigm shift. Let's move away from good versus bad feedback, and we want to bring in the idea of effective versus ineffective feedback defined by the learning of the recipient. And here's the challenge that works hand in hand with that defining by effectiveness. And the challenge is to dispense with judgment terms. Or if is an interim to that, which I'm still working out myself, the first step would be to qualify or justify your judgment term. So let's just break that down for a second. What's a judgment term? The judgment term is often where you say, oh, I observed this, that was good, that was bad, that was not very good, that needed improvement, that was superb, or that was exceptional. These are all judgment terms. It's providing some kind of a rating, and really that's a summative assessment or summative feedback activity. It's not informing learning. So if I say, hey, you did a great job today, you have learned nothing. You might feel encouraged, and so you might say that was a good feedback experience because I felt positive, I felt good about that encouragement. But when you actually shift from good and bad to effective versus ineffective feedback, you realize, wait, I didn't actually learn anything. I don't even know why it was good. I just felt encouraged that the person said it was good. And even now, when I have had that challenge, when people are giving me feedback and they say, hey, I really enjoyed that today, or I thought your teaching was really good, I'll then say, thank you so much for that encouragement. Can you tell me why you thought that was good? What was good about it? Or why did you enjoy it? Or what did you learn from my teaching today? And the same, not just teaching, it might be just my leadership as a registrar in a team, or maybe my specific interaction with the patient. If I'm asking those why questions and how, I'm getting to the heart of the learning, and we'll talk about that later. So the first challenge, as we move towards more learning and less use of judgment terms, which is more summative and rating based, is to talk about the justification for that rating. It was good because of this. It was not so good because of this. And that will naturally lead to, and this is how we make it better. And the learning takes place in all of that section of the justification. And so whenever you're using judgment term, please then say because, and then talk about the why and the how. And ultimately we can learn to move to a point where we eliminate the judgment terms. And what we move to instead, or what I found personally, is moving to descriptive terms. So rather than saying that was good or bad or great or terrible, we start using terms like, the way that you explained it was very clear. I thought the structure was helpful. I thought the time use was very efficient. These are still, I suppose they have an element of judgment in them, but they're descriptive terms, and the descriptive terms of describing how and why things worked well or not so well is where the learning will take place, or at least be the starting point for a learning conversation. So that's my paradigm shift, is the movement from of good and bad feedback to effective versus ineffective feedback. And my challenge to you is to justify your judgment terms and ideally eliminate and avoid using judgment terms and instead use descriptive terms. Let's just look at these really basic ways that we do feedback. Often there's the standard feedback approach of there's an observation, and then there's a judgment, and then there's education. And that ideally the education is facilitating learning. So observation, judgment, and learning. And then sometimes ineffective feedback or bad feedback is just an observation and judgment. This could be good or bad because you might feel good or you might feel bad depending on the judgment. Maybe a good judgment, you feel great, a bad judgment, you feel bad. That doesn't involve learning, it is ineffective feedback. What we really need to do is eventually move to a point where we have this ideal effective feedback of observation, skip judgment terms, use descriptive terms that then lead into the learning and the discussion that happens there. If you want to learn more about feedback, there is literature around there specifically for health education. And one of the best and very easily readable articles is by Fiona Lake and her team from Western Australia, and it's Teaching on the Run Tips, Giving Feedback, which is number 10. There's a whole series of that in 2005 in the MJA. I'd really encourage you, if you're interested, to just learn some basic skills and the understanding behind those skills from an educational perspective in the clinical realm. This is a great starting point. So let's finish up this talk. We'll talk about common settings that we might give feedback and how that would look, and then we'll talk about common barriers and how to overcome them. So when I think about feedback, one of the most common settings that I use this on a regular basis is in my bedside teaching with students. And I think particularly my third year groups that I see on Tuesdays. In this kind of setting, what I'm doing is before I even start the whole tutorial, before we see a patient, I'm setting the scene and establishing a safe learning environment. And I'm going to say, I'm going to be looking for your feedback to me as your teacher. And then I would like to hear from you at least one thing each that you thought worked well about my teaching style, and one suggestion for improving my teaching style, because you as students see a lot of teachers and you get a lot of feedback, but I don't get very much feedback and I want to grow as a teacher. So I'm going to give you feedback that will encourage your growth as a clinician, and I'm asking for your feedback to help my growth as an educator. And usually when I give that kind of deal, it helps establish a healthy feedback and safe learning environment where even with the power differential at play, people are going to give me suggestions. And I've grown so much thanks to many students over many years, and even trainees who have given me feedback on my teaching as well as clinical performance. So I'm giving that kind of preface, and I'm also going to preface to say we're going to do group feedback. And so when you observe your colleague doing the physical examination or the interview or the procedure, you are going to be giving feedback on what they did well and why. and suggestions on how they can improve further, and I will be doing the same. We'll be doing that together as a group, and I explain the power of peer and near-peer feedback there. So the prefacing really helps set the scene, and I'm giving that whole prospectively informed principle at play there by setting that up and asking them for that feedback for their peers and for myself from the very start of the tutorial. And then in terms of the regular feedback with your team, I'll give you an example of when I was a general medicine registrar, and similarly when I was even an upper GI surgery intern, we set a standard of Wednesday. We would go out to lunch as a team. There would be myself in terms of Gen Med as the registrar. I had an excellent resident, and I had a couple of different interns because of changeover who were both very good. And the first couple of times we did that feedback, and again, we set the same standard, this prefacing of saying, even with the power differential, we're all going to give each other as a strength of why you're doing something well and a suggestion for how we can improve. And we set that standard. It's really, really awkward the first time, sometimes awkward even the second time. But after the third week, we really started looking forward to and being more creative with looking for those suggestions for improvement and what we're doing well. And even as the leader of that team, I would start looking at their documentation, discharge summaries, their prescriptions, and getting collateral feedback from allied health, pharmacy, nursing team leaders and such to try and give more and more better quality feedback, which is informed by that observations and specific things to improve on. So that could happen. I think that regular team feedback should be done so much more than it's being done right now. In terms of clinical handover, this could happen during the morning handover or morning report as it's called in some areas. It could be that we're defining and saying we're meant to be sticking to the ISPAR format and we're aiming for a certain timeline, let's say 1 to 2 minutes. And so that feedback can be done as a group, led ideally by the senior clinician in the room, where the person is going to do their clinical handovers. Maybe each staff member takes a turn to go through their admissions from the night. And after each person is finished, we then actually say, okay, what do you think you did well there? Here's, as a group, suggestions on things that we thought you did well and why. And what do you think you can improve on? Here's our observations, and here's our suggestions on how you can improve or even do things differently. Doing that as a group, and then we're also, as a group, kind of seeing quality feedback at play and helping exemplify what that looks like for people that are maybe less familiar with good, effective feedback. And then lastly, it could be a specific activity, which I've talked about during this session already. So the idea of going, okay, I'm going to do a cannula. This could be like one of my 4th year students who's learning to cannulate veins for the first time. And so they're going to say, Andrew, could you observe my cannulation and give me feedback, particularly on my technique from an efficiency and safety perspective? And I said, I'd love to do that. So I observe, and then afterwards we find a quiet setting, uninterrupted, and I talk about the things they did well and why they were done well, and I talk about the suggestions of how they can improve, and I might even use some examples of equipment and demonstrating some technique so that they have ideas for improvement. And that could even be with a teaching session. You're getting feedback, again, prospectively informed, or even your communication style or a family meeting. You can have your peers and seniors offering you feedback. The more you ask for specific feedback with specific questions, the more you will receive that and grow as a professional, as an individual. Here's some common barriers, which some of these I've alluded to already in this talk. So what if the challenge is that you're having this regular meetings, but you're lacking effective critique, or they're not really giving any suggestions? And one of the ways around this, which I've mentioned already, is actually mandating and saying, this is the standard that we expect from each other, that we will each say at least one strength and why, and we will at least make one suggestion on how to improve. Another way is that you can, especially if you've been doing this for a while and you feel like we've been refining well, we're improving a lot, and some of these things we're still improving, but I don't want to say the same thing every week. You could think about not just ways to improve, but ways to maybe do things alternatively. So alternative approaches, alternative suggestions on technique that just give food for thought. So it doesn't always have to be necessarily improving the same way we're doing things. It could be food for thought in terms of, what if we approach this differently? What if it looked different than this? Have you thought of approaching it in this way? And that gives that individual the chance to develop a new skill set to complement the skill set they've already got to approach the same problem but in a different way. What if there's a power differential? Again, we've kind of talked about this a little bit. I think particularly we've had big discussions of that recently about what about giving consultants feedback? And I think one of the important things there is that the senior staff member, whether they're a registrar or a fellow or a consultant or someone senior, that they are the ones saying, I value your feedback. And they're the ones saying, it's not just a normal thing, I'm inviting your feedback, I want to know what I'm doing well and why. I want your suggestions, and I value your suggestions for feedback. I don't get that feedback very often, and I really want to develop and grow as a professional, even at my senior position. Please give me your feedback. I need your suggestions in order to grow. And those kind of, I think honest and authentic invitation, even very junior people and students will respond to that well. And the example I gave before of the bedside teaching, there's a big differential in power and position between me as a registrar and my students at third year. There's potentially a decade apart from us in terms of development and time. But if I preface it the right way and I show that I value that authentic and honest feedback that's given in a constructive and respectful manner, I've found that I've grown immensely from those suggestions for dozens of trainees and students over many years. What if there seems to be an emphasis on a rating or judgment terms there? We talked a bit about that, trying to move to justifying it and using the why or how question. So let's say that you are the recipient of that feedback and you find the person is just focusing most on going, I'd give that a 4 out of 5 and kind of leaving it there. There's no learning, it's just a rating. Or it's saying it was done reasonably well. Yeah, good job. And again, you're going to be encouraged, but there's no learning. It's ineffective feedback. At that point, you can say, thank you for that feedback. Tell me why you think that I was a 4 out of 5. What are the things that I was doing well to make it a 4 out of 5? How can I go from a 4 to a 5 out of 5? Or the same thing, you said it was done reasonably well. What are the things that were done very well? What were the things that were done not so well? And how can I change those things? Those how and why questions will really instigate a deeper level of discussion, and ideally that will lead to learning. And lastly, what if the recipient is very defensive or they're very non-receptive to the feedback? And this can be a very common challenge there as well. And ideally, you want to focus on a growth mindset rather than a fixed mindset. We're all developing, whatever level we are, we're continuing developing and growing, and we need good feedback, effective feedback for learning. And if we're kind of saying this is all about supporting your progressive improvement and your professional development and growth, that's hard to get around that. And the second thing is that sometimes you can utilize a group feedback environment where each person is giving feedback and receiving feedback. That can show they're not being singled out, they're not being attacked. This is a normal thing we do, and participating and receiving feedback and having discussions around that is a normal thing. We don't need to be defensive. We can actually actively seek that out and invite that feedback and receive it well. Likewise, some people go, as an individual, I don't know if I believe your feedback. I don't know if that's valid. And so in those instances, getting multi-source feedback, whether it's a 360-degree review or having multiple people in a meeting contributing to that, will add validity. Because if you're getting the same observations and similar suggestions from multiple people of different roles or different seniority, that person is going to go, this is undeniable. I thought I wasn't doing that, but everyone who's involved is showing that I am actually exhibiting that behavior. Maybe I need to go away and reflect on that and think about how I can apply those suggestions that are there. So there's some of the challenges that I've seen and some of the ways that I've tried to work around them. So to summarize the session that we've had today, we've talked about defining feedback as effective as defined by learning. And we've linked that with a paradigm shift from good and bad feedback to effective and ineffective feedback defined by learning. We talked about the principles of effective feedback and quality feedback. And then we talked about the challenge of eliminating judgment terms to focus more on learning. And that starts the first step of justifying or qualifying your judgment terms by saying this is why, this is because of this reason, and then moving to eliminate the judgment terms and replacing them with descriptive terms, which are going to naturally lead on to learning and those kind of discussions. And we concluded with different settings that you might see feedback and how that looks and how to overcome some common barriers. I hope that's going to be really helpful, and I'd love to see and even hear that you are using feedback more commonly in your team with your seniors and your juniors.